Okay, we are now moving on to lecture 6 on dictionaries and modules. So we are going to go back to a container type called a dictionary, and these are able to hold associative arrays. And we're also going to talk about modules. So modules are an opportunity to use code that was built by other people to do very useful things. Or create your own set of useful code that's kind of brand new. So this is how you would customize Python to do things that it normally doesn't do out of the box. They're kind of add-ons, and you can take advantage of the fact that there's millions of people over the world that use Python and will build these modules. So dictionaries. So again, you should open your terminal, and we see the prompt right here, and if we want to run Python, we simply type Python 3 in the command line, and then this gets us to the interpreter. So we've covered ints, floats, complex, numbers, so these are all different things that store numerical types. We've also covered, Booleans. We've also covered strings, and we've also covered lists. And so strings and lists, remember, are containers. They have elements. And a dictionary is also an example of a container in that it holds a number of different elements. It can be one element, or it can be 0 elements, up to however many you want. And one of the things that's different about this is that it is not a sequence. So remember, lists and strings have particular orders. So dictionaries do not have particular orders. So they're called associative arrays because they associate two values, two different objects together, and these are called a key value pair. So I think what's easiest is just to create one of these objects and play around with it. And so the way you implicitly create a dictionary is using these curly brackets. So you can create an empty dictionary if you want. So we can see that it's a dictionary because when it prints out, we see it has these curly brackets. You can also use the type in order to see what class it is. And we see it's actually a class dictionary, just like we like. All right, so let's create something that has data. So let's see if I can copy and paste this from the lecture notes. And luckily that worked. Oop, new dictionary. All right, so we have created a dictionary that has 3 elements in it. How do we know that it has 3 elements? If we use the length, we see that it has 3 elements. So again, length is a built-in function that simply calls the magic method of whatever object you're using. And this tells us how many elements are in there. Why is it called a dictionary? Because a dictionary is a great example of why you might want this data type. So a dictionary is simply a collection of words, and the words have definitions associated with them. So I've given you 3 examples of this. So I've defined what an aardvark is, I've defined what a butterfly is, and I defined what a cat is. And so for each of these, you need to have 2 different values. You need to have the key, and that is the word, and then you have to have the value, which in this case is called in this case would be the definition. So the syntax for creating a dictionary is that you have to give it some sort of object. So in this case, I've given it a string object. So this is the key of the first element, and then the colon is used to separate the key and the value from each other. So now the definition comes next, and the definition is a value, is also a string, and this is called the value. If we want to have multiple elements, so we could have done this with just using one, for example. So let's see what that looks like. equals aardvark, animal that eats bugs. And this would be a way to create a single element dictionary. We can confirm that using the new dictionary. We'll get this eventually. All right, so it's length of 1. Let's go back and recreate the 3. And so we see that we've separated this by commas. So this should hopefully remind you of lists, where each element is separated by a comma. So similarly, each element of a dictionary is separated by a comma. The difference, of course, is that a list only has a single value for each element, whereas the dictionary has a key value pair. So what is useful about the dictionary is that you might not know what exactly the word is that you need, but you want to have a very easy way to look it up. So let's say you create this huge dictionary. It has millions of different key value pairs, and someone says to you, okay, I want to know what a cat is. What's the definition of a cat? So you want a way to rapidly look that up. And so the way you look that up is very similar to how you would use a list. So if you want to look up an element in a list, you just give it the index, and then it returns the index, the value that's stored at that index. So the way the dictionary works is, instead of supplying it a number, you give it the key. And so this is why it's called a key. So if I supply it with cat, it's able to look through the entire dictionary and do this very rapidly to find the key value pair that starts with cat, and then it returns the value, the definition, as the output. So we could do this for aardvark, or we could use it with butterfly. And so all of these will return the value. So dictionaries are associative arrays because they associate a key, the word, with the value, the definition. And this is a one-directional way, so you can rapidly look up the key, but it's impossible using this dictionary to look up a definition. So if I said to you something like, tell me what type of animal is a crazy pet, it would actually be pretty difficult to find that using a dictionary. It's possible, it would just take a lot of effort in order to do that. And you can think about it as like a physical, real dictionary. I'm not sure if you know what physical dictionaries are these days, but if you had a book, and if I told you to find me the definition of cat, you could do that very easily. You would open the book, and then you know how to search the index, let's say, and then eventually you would find cat with it on page 162. But if I told you, find me the word that has the definition crazy pet, that would be really hard using a physical dictionary, because you'd have to kind of read through it until you find it. So dictionary is actually really well named, I think, for this type of object. What happens if you try to access a key that doesn't exist? So let's say I wanted to look up a dog. Well, I get what is called a key error. So now we've seen a brand new exception that we haven't seen before, called key error. You can test whether a key is in a dictionary. So, we saw we could use the in keyword to determine if there was a letter within a string, or similar with a list, and you can actually do something similar using the in keyword again. True, cat is in new dictionary, that's true, but dog is in new dictionary, false. So that's one of the ways to tell, does this word actually exist? So let's see what sort of methods are associated with the dictionary. So again, if I use type, I confirm that this is a class called dict. And then if I use dir, I can see what sort of methods are available. So there's not a ton of them. Some of the useful ones are keys, values, and items. Those are the ones I use the most, and I typically don't use these unless I'm trying to iterate through a dictionary. And so it's actually pretty rare to use any of these methods of dictionary. Kind of the most useful thing to do is just use it, with the bracket operator to look up things. So you notice, it has this get item magic method. So that allows us, that is what implements the logic of being able to take cat as the keyword and then return the definition of cat, return the value that's associated with the key. It has a length magic method. This is why we can return the length of the dictionary. But you notice one of the things it doesn't have is addition or subtraction or multiplication. So you can't actually, add or multiply or anything like that. So this class is pretty straightforward, and it's primarily just used as an associative array in order to associate two values together, called the key and the value. You can iterate through a dictionary, so let's see what happens for element in new dictionary, print element. And you see what's returned is actually the keys. So it actually iterates through the keys. So again, this has a iterator magic method, so you're able to iterate through it. But the default way that it actually works is to return the key values of the dictionary. So if you wanted to, you could do something like this, print the element, and then you could also print the definition by doing this. And so now it first prints the word, and then it prints animal that eats bugs. If you wanted to iterate through the definitions, you can also do that by using, this is where the magic method items, this is the wrong one. So if you wanted to iterate through the definitions, you would use the magic method values. Or I can't use that. So now we see all of the definitions, and if you wanted to go through be explicit about going through the keys, you can also do that. So this is the same as just not having anything at all. And then if you want both at once, you can do that, and that's where the items can be useful. And we are going to see that we're going to encounter a brand new data type when we do that. So now you see that what's printed is separated by these parentheses, open and close parentheses. So that should be a clue to you that we've encountered a new data type. So we've seen strings, lists, dictionaries. They use the quotes, the brackets, the square brackets, the curly brackets, and this is the first time we've seen the parentheses. So what is this? This is called a tuple. A tuple is very similar to a list, with the exception that you can't modify it. So I don't really have a good answer why Python decided to implement both a tuple and a list. But the main thing that distinguishes them is that you can't modify it. So you can access individual elements. You can access individual elements of a tuple in the same way that you would do a list. But if I wanted to modify it, I can't do that. Tuple object does not support item assignment. So we saw how to do this a little bit earlier. We can actually take a sequence and decompose it into different variables as long as we give a name for every element in the container. So we could also write it like this. So what has happened here is it's taken this tuple that has two different elements in it. So if we look at the length of definition, it has two. And we've now said, all right, take that first value, store it as key, and the second one store as value. And so now we can put that separately. All right, so hopefully that is pretty straightforward. So we'll kind of go through in class why dictionaries are really useful in biology, and they will be very often used in your coding.